Good afternoon, or good evening, actually. I'm Ellen Weber. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Emergency Medicine Journal, which is a publication of the British Medical Journal Publishing Company. And I'm also a professor of emergency medicine at the University of California in San Francisco. And I've been working in publishing for a while. Actually began my career as a freelance writer, then decided to go to medical school. And then here I am, back towards the end of my career, editing a journal, which I love. And I show this cartoon because this is the way people think about us editors, that we're standing there ready to bat you down, chop you up, shoot you down for any time you try to submit a manuscript. And so what I'm here to do is sort of hopefully put a friendly face on editors and to tell you how to get your work published and possibly why it's not getting published, because our goal is to have you get published. It's not to not publish you, it's to have you get published. But for other predictors of outcomes, you've already collected the data on patients. You can look at their age and their gender and so forth, and look at what predicts their outcome. You can potentially do a survey or interviews to look for the barriers to compliance, which often may generalize beyond just what is happening in your department. And eventually you could use this information to perform a quality improvement project. And quality improvement projects, when well written, are publishable because they often give people an idea of other things that they can do in their own departments to fix things, even if it's not that particular problem. So it is something people start at, but you really want to try and make a little bit more of it before you expect it to get published in most journals. Now, a very important piece of research is the failure to mitigate or recognize bias. Now, again, a lot of this occurs in your design stage. So what is bias? Bias is systematic errors in the design, implementation, or analysis of the study that leads to the wrong answer. It isn't necessarily a prejudice or even a desire to go a certain way. It's something you've done in the way the study is designed or the way you collected the data that tends to and then at the end, I want to just talk a minute about the abstract. The last thing often that you want to write is the abstract, or you might want to edit an abstract you wrote for a proposal. And the abstract very much follows what I've just told you about the other sections of the paper. So you should have a short introduction as to either a background or the goal, but it should explain the why of the study, not just what you did. Or what your research question is. You should spend, even though it's an abstract, don't scrimp on the methods, don't scrimp on the results. Those should be the longest part of your abstracts. And then introduction and conclusion should be short. And your conclusion should very briefly restate the findings in a different way, more qualitatively, shall we say. And then what is the implication of your results? Why should I care again about your study? So that should kind of give you an idea of some of the things you need to think about when you're writing. Now, I mentioned that there were 7 things that were reasons that papers were not published, but there are really 8. And the most important one is that people fail to write the manuscript in the first place. So we did a study quite a number of years ago, and we looked at the abstracts that were submitted to the Society for Academic Emergency Medicine meeting. And we found 492 abstracts were submitted. Of these, 59% never sentences, don't repeat yourself, and ask others to read and edit your work. And be willing to accept their criticism and their edits. Proofreading is really important because even though you won't necessarily be rejected, when you make proofreading errors, people start to think you're not being very careful, and maybe you aren't careful in other things as well. Make sure your tables and your figures and your text all line up with regard to the numbers you use. And then make sure that you follow the submission guidelines. Very important that you choose the right journal and the right format for your paper, and that you follow the instructions with regard to word count and the design of the format of the abstract, and what whether they want subheads or not, and how you do the references. Journals a little bit egotistical, and they like to know that you wrote this paper for them. Now, that's unfortunate because we all have different styles. So if you do get rejected, then make sure that when you change it and submit it somewhere else, you've read what that journal wants. But in general, make sure that you have read everything. You also know what the journal's mission is, and so that you're not sending it to a journal that isn't going to be interested in your work. Finally, be persistent yet open to criticism. If you're rejected, welcome to the club. Like I said, I've had many articles rejected on the first, second, third try. Put it aside briefly, put that manuscript aside briefly, revise according to what the reviewers say, to the extent you believe they're correct, and then submit to another journal, and just keep repeating that until you get the paper published. So takeaways. Remember, sell your research question, not the results. Use a research checklist both for planning and writing the study. Address potential sources of bias when you're writing your methods, as well as when you design. Keep it simple, ask for help. And if you're rejected, learn from the reviews, and as they say, try again. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and also just let you know that many of us are out there as mentors who would be very happy to read your work and help you get it into a shape that will make it publishable or improve it if it's already been rejected. Don't do this alone. You have a family behind you.